Alright, back again with Education Technology Introduction, SPPP 1042, and today we are going to talk about instructional media. And in this class we are going to cover many topics, subtopics in instructional media and so on. Let's go and see what we are going to cover in this class. Right, in this class we are going to cover a lot of subtopics regarding to instructional media. What is actually media in education, and what are the categories of media in education? We are going to talk and discuss about projected and non-projected media, printed and non-printed media, what types of media we use in education, like multimedia kits, manipulatives, display surfaces, exhibits, media selection, and then we will move on to Dale's cone of experience, germ burner model of education, and then the cone of learning, and then finally we are going to talk about the factors for media selection and teaching and learning. So when we actually talk about media, what do we mean? Media is actually any sort of communication. When we talk about media, we talk about mediums, communication, tools between, for example, two parties or more. And the word media itself has been taken from a Latin medium word which means actually between. So the term actually refers to anything that brings information between one party to another, the source and the receiver. Alright, when we defined media as a communication between the source and the receiver, so what actually instructional media means? Instructional media, very simple definition, could be any sort of communication or media or tools that we use inside our classroom, for example, to instruct for our student in this to achieve our objectives. All right, so examples of the instructional media could be any materials and physical means inside our classroom to facilitate students' achievement of instructional objectives. So we can simply say that media transports the learning content to the learners. By using media, which means any sort of media, LCDs, TVs, audios, even the textbooks, alright, so all this media help us to transport our knowledge as a teachers to our students. This transportation, it's called communication, which means media in the first place. So we can simply define media in education as any media that can be used inside our classroom, and actually this media could be defined by its technology, simple system and processing capabilities. And the most obvious characteristics of a medium are its technology. So it's all about what type of technology that we use that refers to this kind of media inside our classroom. Alright, so there are actually 6 classifications of media, which are the conventional versus instructional media, old versus new media, big versus small, electronic versus non-electronic, printed versus not printed, and then projected versus not or non-projected media. And we are going to talk about each one later on in this class. And as we can see here, this kind of media, which is the whiteboard or the chalkboards, is very common in, for example, in each school nowadays. Even though we have technology, we have smart boards, we have a lot of technologies, LCDs and so on, but we still use this kind of media simply because it's very easy to use, very cheap, and no training needed to use such medium, and everybody could do it, the student, teachers, and so on. So we can simply conclude that media in education is any sort of communication, physical materials, any type of technology that we use inside our classroom simply to instruct to our students, to transport this knowledge that we have as a teacher to our students. And all this for the sake of achieving our objectives. Alright, so according to Henich, there are actually 6 basic media for learning and instruction. 6 media categories, which are text, visuals, manipulatives, audio, motion media, and people. And as we can see here, text simply means books, poster, computer screen, etc. Audio, which means any kind of voice or music that we use to teach our student. Visuals, for example, diagrams, posters, and so on. And motion media, which means any that kind of videos, animation, and sometimes we use TV or movies inside the classroom. Alright, so let's see what are the differences between projected and non-projected media. By its name, we can simply understand that non-projected media, it's a media which does not need any projection system. At the same time, for the projected media, we need a projection system to project our media. So in the non-projected media, we will not need any electronic or electricity sometimes. Alright, so for the non-projected media disadvantages, obviously it's less attractive to use the chalkboards while you have the ability to use the LCD and you prepare your presentation and use some motion graphics and so on. So it's less attractive, usually small in the size, because however you are trying to make your font, for example, bigger. If you have a bigger class, not everybody will see your typing. And then we have storage problem. Alright, so printed media, which means any sort of media that is actually printed, hard copy, like books, magazines, pictures, photographs, brochures, flyers, and so on. While on the other hand, non-printed media refers to anything that displays materials and non-display materials, such as relay, model, diorama, learning boards, audiovisual materials, and so on. And we will see some examples and pictures for non-printed media following on in this slides. And as we know, there are basic types of media. Let's see some examples. For media that present real objects, we can see model and diorama, and we will see some pictures later on. And for the printed text, we can see books, handouts, magazines, and so on. Chalkboard or whiteboard, overhead transparencies, which actually known as OHP, and it has been used way before the LCD was invented. And then we have the slides, for example, the slide projector and PowerPoint presentation. Alright, let's talk about multimedia kits. When we hear the term multimedia kits, as a teacher, the first thing comes to our head is a collection of educational materials that actually has been used to instruct one topic. For example, there is a lot of media kits about teaching English. which contains a lot of materials, videos, photos, songs, and so on. So multimedia kits, it's a collection of materials that we actually use in our teaching and learning process. Alright, so multimedia kits is actually a collection of teaching and learning materials involving more than one type of medium, as we mentioned in the previous slide, and it's organized around a single topic. You cannot find multimedia kits for teaching English, for example, and Arabic at the same time. This could be one multimedia kit and the other one for English, and the other one is multimedia kit for teaching Arabic, and so on. So it needs to be for a single topic, and it may include real objects sometimes. Alright, let's move on to learn about manipulatives. Manipulatives are actually real objects that we, most of the time use to teach kindergarten or kids at the early stages. And these objects that we use can be viewed and handled in learning settings, and it is actually attract student attention, and they could simply deal with it, and they could simply explore and handle and inspect them, and they are very effective to teach a student using these kind of medium. Alright, so aside from manipulatives, we still have real objects, models, and mockups. What do we mean by real objects is bringing a real object to the student. For example, if I want to show my student, for example, a laptop, it's better to bring a laptop and show it to them other than showing them a picture of a laptop. And the models, it's actually 3D presentations of objects that I cannot actually bring to the class. Alright, so for display surfaces, actually we use many types of display surfaces inside our classroom simply to display knowledge or to display visuals, support information to our students, and we will get to know display surfaces types. And here, as we can see, some examples of the display surfaces: whiteboard, bulletin board, magnetic board, and flip charts, and each one of them has some advantages and disadvantages and so on, and this is actually for you to read. Alright, so let's move on to talk about exhibits. Exhibits are actually some of the real life experience. For example, field trips, displays, dioramas. And let's see field trips, for example. We can see that in the field trips, we actually take the students outside the classroom. We let the student live the experience by their own eyes. For example, taking them to the zoo, museum, public buildings, and so on. Alright, and for the display, it's like an array of objects, visuals, and printed materials, and we could actually display. And as we can see here, guys, these are some of the models that we could actually use inside the class. And these are some of the examples for diorama, which simply is like 3D presentations of real objects that we could use to simplify the meaning for the student. And here we can see some of the learning boards. Alright, let's move on to the other topic in this class, which is media selection. Media selection actually is an art. It's like an art of teaching, which is, it's not very easy to find the best match between the media and the desired learning outcomes. So we need to be careful when we want to select a certain media in our classroom. We need to be careful to select the right media to achieve actually our objectives in the class. And because media differ in the extent of which they can represent different kinds of content, and for the fact that media could differ in their ability to handle concrete or abstract knowledge. Some media represent concrete knowledge. For example, the television can show concrete examples of the abstract concepts, and the videos showing the concrete events, and the soundtrack analyzing this event. So the well-designed media could help learners to move from the concrete to the abstract and back again. So it's like a non-stop process, and this actually happens when we design and we select the appropriate media in our setting. And in regard to media and media education and media selection, we need to understand Dale's cone of experience, which is simply divided into three main categories, which are inactive, iconic, and symbolic. Inactive means any kind of direct, purposeful experience. When we want to, for example, if I want to select some of the students and let them get out and give me a dramatic act, when I'm doing that, I'm actually giving the student the opportunity to get a real life experience. Then, second, we have Jerome Berner, which identified three stages of cognitive representations, which are inactive, iconic, and symbolic representation. And in Jerome Berner, we can see that the inactive examples, it's more understandable for the students because we use actually real objects, okay? And then the iconic example, as you can see here, he used the for example sun icon and then calculated 3 plus 3, all right? And then finally the symbolic, which is the less attractive stage, by using simply the symbol itself. And then finally we have the cone of learning, which simply means I see, I forgot, I hear, and I remember, I do, and I understand. What we understand from this is when we let the student do, not only hear and see, the understanding, the remembering will be more, okay? So if I'm asking the student to, for example, come out and do a speech or display or sing a song or do whatever class activity. And obviously, for you as a teacher, there are some factors that influence the use of media at schools. For example, let's take two of them. Teachers' awareness about tools, teaching aids. The teacher needs to be aware of what tools actually he needs to achieve his objectives, and the availability of the tools and facilities at the school. Teachers actually needs to be aware of what tools does the school have. For examples, from the factors in the media selection, you need to be aware of how much your audience are. Are they large, a small group, or self-instruction? Do they read or non-reader? Okay. Do they have motor skills? Do they have do I need to use still visuals, motion visuals, and so on? So there's actually some factors that you need to be aware of as a teacher when you want to select the media you want to use. Alright, so there are actually some technical skills. The place you want to use, is it suitable or not? The number of the student, okay? The financial, is it very expensive for the school, and so on. Alright, so thank you very much for watching. I hope everything is clear, and please ask me any question you would like to, and bye bye.